Cafe, Weird Radio Russell Dowden, and so much more. American Freedom Radio.
Helicopters hover over rough terrain. Disorder in the house.
Disorder out of chaos. Reptile wisdom.
Zombies on the lawn.
Thank you for joining us, folks. Deadline Live, Jack Blood, AmericanFreedomRadio.com. That's right. We're evildoers. We're evil mongers. We're for American freedom. Because we love this country. We just don't happen to love the people that are running it. Yes, thank you for joining us on the broadcast today. We are joined here by Jason Marsh. He is the author of Surviving Euphoria, Selected Writings on Politics, Travel, and Life in Europe. He is a keen observer of politics and society on both sides of the Atlantic. His father himself was a politician in Minnesota. He's been on a mass interview tour for this book, Surviving Euphoria, which I thought maybe even a better title would be, maybe this will be his next book. I'm always good for giving the guy the next book on this show. Surviving Utopia, because that's pretty much where we're at. Jason Marsh, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Glad to be with you, Jack.
Give us a clear picture. How long have you been back from Europe now?
Just about 2 years.
Give us a clear picture on how things worked in Europe. And before you do, let me ask you this. Were you allowed, before it's now widely acknowledged that Europe is generally socialized, were you allowed to say that as they were building up to it? Because here you can't say anything about that, or they'll call you a kook and a nut and every other name in the book.
Well, I mean, because those on the left don't want the debate to center around socialism, because most Americans are center-right, and, they want to try to define the debate on their terms. So that's one of the main reasons why there's such a revolt against, or a push against using that terminology. But, were we able to use that in Europe? My wife and I are teachers. We were in Berlin, Germany. I would say that we were fairly far behind enemy lines, and we were outnumbered greatly. So the small group of people that we talked politics with, we certainly talked about socialism in Germany, but it's one of those things that it's so far down that road that it's common.
It's just accepted, isn't it? And by the way,
it is.
We don't have that great of a phone connection. Maybe I'll get you to back off your phone just about 2 inches or so. It might help us, and if not, we'll reconnect with you. No, but, I mean, here you can't say it. There you can say it, and here we always hear, oh, well, Europe is socialized, just deal with it. But I wondered, running up to it, maybe before you got there, if it was just wrong. You weren't allowed to criticize. You weren't allowed to say that, no, this was never going to happen, ever. You're delusional. And then the next thing you know, that's exactly what happened. We look at the European Union. You weren't allowed to talk about that or acknowledge that either. And then they just had their 50th anniversary here 2 years ago. They didn't tell people about it until 1986.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that you're seeing the same sort of playbook in this country that you saw in Europe is that, the way that you become a socialistic continent, a socialistic nation, is that you basically give and give and give, and, everybody is dependent on the system in some way, that people just end up voting their own narrow interests. And pretty soon, everybody's living off the government in some fashion that you're so far into it that you're not going to vote against your benefits, whatever that may be.
Sure. Well, I mean, people don't I guess over there maybe they don't realize who pays for it. Over here, we've got that. We've figured that out. We pay for it. We pay for everybody else's malfeasance and irresponsible behavior, which is really the ultimate problem here. We're heading in that direction, aren't we? You kind of explain what you saw with the healthcare system and socialized medicine, national healthcare, all that stuff in Europe, and talk about maybe how far we have. How much longer do we have here?
You mentioned at the beginning of this segment about me being on quite a tour of interviews and all that stuff. And when I started this about 2 months ago, I thought, man, we're still a little ways off. At the time, the Congressional Budget Office was, expecting that, it's going to take 10 years for our national debt to be, 82% of GDP. I read some statistics just today that the IMF was saying that we're going to have that for fiscal year 2008. So, even the predictions are coming in much, much faster. Currently, at this pace, we're going to be a far more indebted country than any of the European nations that have been spending like crazy for the last 30, 40, 50 years. So if we would have had this conversation a few months ago, I would have said, well, we've got a little bit of time, but, we're right smack dab in the middle of it. And unless something changes in 2010.
Let me ask you a question, if I could, Jason. Who owns Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz? Is it the government, or are we ahead of them now on that?
Well, when it comes to GM, we certainly are. The one thing that you saw in Europe is basically a form of corporatism. Big government loves big business because, it's pretty tough to control, a million small businesses. But if you have just a handful of large businesses, then you can control them. And look at what
centralization,
look at what happened to the car industry. So you see that in Europe. I mean, corporatism runs rampant. And so, GM, we're probably ahead of them. But many of their businesses are, kind of co-opted like that. The airlines in a lot of European countries, for example, are nationalized. So it's, we're there. I mean, we are there.
Why will socialize, I know we're not supposed to use that word, we are evilmongers, why socialized medicine doesn't work and actually costs more than our own healthcare system currently is estimated at?
Well, my wife and I got to live it. A lot of people talk about statistics. They talk in platitudes. We want to, help this person. We want to, cover everybody. But not a lot of people can honestly say that, I lived it. I experienced it. And from my experience, this is just Germany. Now, you got to, realize that every European country's got a slightly different take on their socialized medicine. But in Germany, I tell this people as plain as I can, my wife and I paid more, and we got less coverage. Mm-hmm. And everybody, well, no, that's not going to happen here. But if you look anywhere in the world, when you have socialized medicine, you will get less, and you will pay more. In Germany, for example, it was a great deal if you were wealthy. And this is, one of the disingenuous arguments of those on the left is that, if you're an elite, then, we're going to make some exceptions for you. But you poor middle-class fuckers, you're the ones that are going to get stuck with it.